really fortunate, raised in a Christian home, godly parents that love the Lord and serve the Lord. But even in the most idyllic circumstances, sometimes marriages don't survive. And through circumstances, my parents did divorce. So I was raised in a home with a godly mother through my teen years. Went to school in Salem, kind of outspoken in my testimony, strong in faith, and had such a confident assurance in my walk with the Lord. But with that also can come some spiritual pride. So part of my journey and my story that I'm sharing involves that facet of my life. Duane and I started dating our senior year of high school. Actually, the summer before our senior year, we had our first date at the zoo, and it had all those awkwardnesses of a first double date. I remember at the time we're on our way back and we're gonna stop to eat, and I was so naive about the whole dating game that it was, am I buying my lunch or is he? So I ordered real minimal because I didn't have much money, and then I got a milkshake, and I remember it was just like a little dinner salad. And they all got this wonderful food. And then when he paid, I thought, snap, I could have had a really major good meal. But we had a lot of fun, and it was just the beginning of getting to know each other. Partway through the school year, we became more physically involved. And for me, it was a constant point of conflict. It was constantly going against everything in my grain and everything in my faith. And I remember just kind of that press of guilt and shame, driving home after being together for the evening, repenting and crying out, God, change this. I don't want it to go this way, and setting a course only to then stumble a time later, a few dates later, and realize, okay, I'm in this cycle. There came a point where I needed to deal with my reality. And so for me, I knew there came a point I needed to take a pregnancy test. And I remember I had it all set up on my mom's ironing board while she was at work and my sister was gone. And I remember navigating that and seeing those results that were a moment of piercing reality, and a lot of pausing, a lot of what do I do, and this is the real deal. And so I'm processing all this, and a phone call rings, and of all the people to call, it was a friend in school I had tried so hard to witness to. This gal, her name's Laura, and she was somebody I so much wanted to share faith in Christ with and had invested a lot during this school year, and she's the one that calls within minutes of this test result, and my head's spinning, and I'm trying to avoid saying anything, and she kind of called it out, and she said, "You're pregnant, aren't you?" over the phone. And I'm like, okay, I gotta deal with this, and this is real. And my response, of course, was, well, actually I am, I just found out. And her response was, I'll take you to get an abortion. It's not a big deal, Kim, you can do it. And for me, I felt immediately that's not the path I'm gonna take, and shared that with her. And she said, it doesn't cost, I'll take care of the cost. And then she started to tell me the different girls at school that she had helped and take for their abortions. And that just broke my heart. For one, it's things you don't want to know about people. It's such a point of pain. And it was also an area I was so naive to, had never contemplated. I was more the girl that looked at the girls in that circumstance with maybe a critical eye, and never imagined I would be one in the process of a decision like that. She heard my heart, and she heard my words, and said whatever I needed, she supports me and would be available, which was very gracious. I lived down the road from this creek. There was a creek that went through the backyard, and then there's a bridge just down the road from us. And so we went walking, and we spent some time talking, and that's when I finally got the courage to tell him that I thought I was pregnant. And it was a little more dramatic than I'm telling you now. I think I did the I'm pregnant, and I do believe he blanched white and was quite taken back.
I was shocked. I was scared. I was 18 years old. I was just out of high school, and I didn't know, man, what am I going to do?
His first response was, so are you going to get an abortion?
Back then, abortion was just it was a common thing.
And I just said, that's not for me. I don't feel right about that. That's not what I'm going to do. And then he was like, okay. And then he got quiet, and he kind of dropped his head down. And I could tell he's thinking, and I'm crying.
I asked her, I said, well, maybe we should get married.
And I'm like, that's probably not the right decision for us right now. And I'm telling you, that's not the way a girl waits for a proposal. And I really did know that was not the right decision for us. And so when we said goodnight, he was going to go home and talk to his folks. And I was to go in and talk with my mom. Do you remember what it was like talking to your parents?
Yes, I do. Going home, it was the thought of, I've disappointed my parents. I've let them down. They're going to be disappointed in me. And so it was really hard. I came from a background where you really didn't show your emotions. You didn't talk to your parents about things. You just, if something happened, you just said, hey, this is what happened. Then, you moved on. So it was very nerve-wracking talking to my parents. But after speaking to them, they just asked me, well, what are you going to do? And I just said, I really don't know.
I remember the next day when we got together, Duane asked, so how did it go with your mom? And I asked how it went with his folks, and he shared their response. And I had not yet told my mom. I kind of chickened out. And so I remember you saying, she needs to know This is your mother. And if you won't tell her, I will. And I'm thinking, dude, this is not a good idea. It might be better for you to wait. And so he actually said, I'm waiting outside till I know you've told her. Otherwise, I'm going to come in and share. And so he waited outside in his car. And I remember going in, and my mom was busy. She was sewing. And I sat in the chair by the wood stove, and I just felt so ill. And I remember just saying, Mom, I need to talk to you. And she turned, and I think she knew when she looked at me something very intense was going on. And I remember her taking off her glasses, and she had that perplexed look, and I said, your daughter's gotten herself pregnant.
When she said that, I don't even think I waited for her to get the words out that she was pregnant.
I just saw her eyes well up.
I got up from my sewing machine, walked over, and I just hugged her.
She stood up and moved towards me.
And I said, we're gonna walk through it together. I'll never be ashamed of you.
I will never be ashamed of you. And she held me, and we cried.
When I found out that my older sister Kim was pregnant, I was in absolute disbelief. I did not believe her. She told me she was pregnant, and I kept saying, no, you're not, no, you're not. And she was like, yes, I am. And she actually got out the pregnancy test because I was so convinced that she was just joking with me. And when I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, you really are pregnant. And it was a shock to me because Kim's character, her lifestyle, the two just didn't, in my mind, didn't line up.
Talking with Mom and really weighing through all the process and the decisions that we needed to make. Blessed to have so much support and willingness, but I also could see the realities, financially, the implications, emotionally.
Eventually I said, I don't think a grandmother should be the sole provider or the caregiver for that baby. I don't think that's a good choice. I think the child needs to grow up in a home with parents, loving parents. And I'll do whatever I can, but I can't raise your child.
I knew that would be a real burden in our current circumstances. We even weighed in on the thought of my sister and her husband adopting.
For me, I had just a few months before, I think maybe 4 or 5 months before that, had a baby, and she died shortly after birth. So I was still raw, feeling a lot of loss. I carried full term, and I was married, and I lost a baby, and she wasn't married, and she was having one, and it just didn't seem fair.
I'm enough of a realist to know the complications that could happen to be alongside a family member raising my child.
I remember really dealing with the fact that in reality, I'd walked down the same path Kim had. She just got pregnant before she was married. I didn't get pregnant before I was married, but I made the same choices and could have very well been I could have very easily been in the same situation.
I have an amazing grandma, Grandma Pollard, and through her work in a ministry up in Washington State, she had connected with a really neat gentleman named Neil Gardenhire. And Neil worked for an adoption agency.
This was his interest in placing babies into Christian homes.
Yeah.
And so right away, I don't know, I imagine I told our Dallas first, I said, if Kimberly decides to adopt, please get a hold of Neil.
And Neil stepped into our life. We had an amazing conversation. He was incredibly gracious and not manipulative, but actually just helped me kind of list out and process. It was very typical for me to load up my dog, my Springer Spaniel. I had a little Volkswagen Bug, my Bible and journal, and I'd cruise over to a place in Salem called Bush Park. And Bush Park is this place of humongous oak trees, and I remember those times of just walking with my dog and my Bible and journal. I'd find a spot, just park there, and just open up the scripture and write my heart out and processed my thoughts. I never saw my pregnancy as a mistake, as something of error, something unplanned, because I look at scripture and all through it I just see everything of life is created with plan and purpose. And so I would be processing that at the park and realizing, God, you are a God of destiny and purpose. And so for this baby, whoever they're going to grow up to be, you have a purpose and a destiny. And so my decision is not about what I want, but what moves this child's future towards your destiny and your purpose. Am I that person who can do that? Do I have, in my capacity and in my resources, the ability to bring this person to the fullness of what you have and what you designed them to be? And I would come to the end of that and I would hit that wall of thought and just be, I don't know that I have enough. I don't know that I am enough. I know with God we can rise up, I get that in my walk with the Lord. But I just kept coming up to that point of saying I need to consider what else could be, what else could bring that to life. And that's where I really did open my heart to consider adoption. Neil came down and at that time had a chance to meet Duane. And we talked about all the possibilities. And he was really candid about some of the hard parts too.
And so I sat down with them and we talked, and they were so committed to following through with adoption. And I found out where the father was in this whole picture, who also was a committed part of this picture.
For me, adoption at the time was a good idea because me and Kim had known each other for probably 2 years, and we didn't know where the relationship was going. So I thought adoption would be, a good idea because we knew the child at that point would be raised, possibly by a Christian family. That was something that was very important to us.
It was kind of frightening to think your own flesh and blood was going to be someplace and you would perhaps never ever see them again. That was hard. It was a push and a pull, a real tug of war inside of me.
One of the things as I would stand back and look and watch is the amount of love that there was within that family system and the amount of care and concern. And so the thing after that first meeting, and the thing that I came away with, is if this goes through, if they follow through, this will be far from the end of the adoption process.
A lot of times with my times with the Lord and those Bush Park times and conversations that I would have with God, there's a lot of different scriptures that come alive. And one that's so familiar in believers' lives but became mine for my child was that God had plans for my child. Plans I have are for good and not for evil, for a hope and a future. So as I would weigh through things and pray about things, I'd pray, God, I long that this child would be raised in a godly home where you are foremost, Lord of all. Pray that this child would grow with siblings that respect and honor and serve one another. That this child would grow up with a father who represented the Father heart of God. It's an amazing thing to be praying and hoping and desiring things you have no control over. in hope and in expectation. And to see how God might fulfill that would be the next adventure. My mom was there, and she was a great support, and Duane was there. I remember just kind of that point of realizing it's all in, this is the real deal, and that final push, and at that moment, the discovery that I have a baby girl. I remember they lifted her up and did all the proper care that they do and wrapped her. I didn't have that moment where they laid her on my stomach. I didn't have that moment where they moved me towards bonding. This hospital, it's kind of old school. It had the birthing center, and then there was this tunnel that went down underneath into the main unit of the hospital. And so a little bit after recovery, they took me by the nursery in a wheelchair, and I could see that she was resting and doing well. They had taken me down through this maze, like through the elevators and the back ways, and going down through this tunnel. Felt like you were taking steps separating from something. That tunnel became kind of the place of transition. And so it was like choosing to engage there, choosing to walk through that place. There's a passage I love in Hosea where it says, I will take your valley of Achor, or troubling, and make it to become a doorway of hope. And for me, this was an incredible valley of troubling. This was an incredible place of despair and grief. And that tunnel became my reality of that, I think. And yet God was right there to meet me to say, Kimber, you can stay there, or you can allow me to turn this and let it become hope. And for me, I made a decision that this would not be a place of grief. I remember in the morning knowing I'm going to be going home. I'm anticipating that, and I'm going to be going home without a baby I just delivered. And I was given the opportunity to go spend some time with her. And my mom waited in the car. That's where she was weeping.
I mean, if we'd brought her back to our home, I would never have let her out of the house. So God in His grace, again, knew what was best for SaraAnn.
And my grandma came up and met me.
You sat in the rocking chair with little SaraAnn and rubbing her head, her hair, and touching her face. And that really touched me.
Yeah.
It was a love scene.
And I'm praying over her, and I'm crying, and I can remember seeing the tears drop and thinking, oh no, I don't want to get her wet, and just some of the natural things. But for me, it was a really precious and sacred moment, because I believe in dedicating our children to the Lord. I believe that's an honor and a privilege as a parent, and this was mine. There was no pastor. There was no church surrounding me to agree. There was just a very God-fearing, gracious grandma in the corner in agreement, and a mom who would, in her way, express her heart to the Lord.
We were a family of 5, Matthew, and a set of twins, David and Daniel. We kept our 3 boys home from school that day. This was a day of victory. We'd waited for it for 7 years, and we were finally going to make that trip. We were going to meet the foster mom, Donna, and she'd be flying in. We met her. Neil had called me earlier that morning. He said, whatever you do, don't run towards Donna and grab the baby out of her arms. He said, if you can, find something for her to carry back to Seattle. We went prepared with a bouquet of several roses, so Donna had something to carry back. And finally we met Donna, and she had a bundle of pink in her arms.
In SaraAnn's growing up years, we tried to, as soon as possible, talk to her about adoption and that it was a blessing. She was a special child because God had given her to us in a special way. Actually, when she went to school, she would bounce around and be happy. I'm adopted, and you're not, so I'm special.
It was about 3 years later, Blessing and Burden came to our door with a picture of a little Down syndrome baby. Before the end of that day, we had the wheels moving in as far as the home study, working on this little baby and how we could get her. And thus God gave us Catherine Joan Mulder. They just were meant to be together. There was no way about it. They were sisters, and that was good enough.
Duane and I went on about 2.5 years later and got married. It was the right time, and it was God's timing, and it was a real celebration. From there, about a year into our marriage, it was in a November month, I found out I was pregnant, all very swiftly, and within that same spectrum of time, realized something was going very wrong, and ended up having a miscarriage. It had what would be all the normal responses emotionally, but what I found is it opened the thought that maybe this is judgment. Maybe I would never have a child because that was an appropriate judgment or sentence. About a year after the miscarriage, I gave birth to another baby girl, and we named her Grace, Tara Grace. I remember poking her. I don't know that she ever got to sleep in long segments because I wanted to make sure she was breathing, because there was still that part of me that didn't know my God the way He really is in true form, and that His grace is so encompassing. And so you kind of always wait for that other shoe to drop, for something to happen. And instead, He was marvelous. It was just a couple years after the birth of Grace that we were pregnant again and had a son, our son Brent.
I just remember just being so happy that I was going to have a son, because I think every man wants to have a son, wants to have a boy. So I remember being real excited.
And we had hard times. There were times, because of Duane's walk with the Lord, at times struggling. I felt like a single mom. At times I felt solo in the journey. But yet I could see in the core of his heart was a desire to be a man of God. And it was so neat at a time in our marriage where he did a full-on rededication of his life with the Lord. It was like awakening something in me to believe for more. I was at a church, and I remember hearing our pastor kind of mentioned a new ministry that was starting in Salem, and it was called a Crisis Pregnancy Center. He was kind of describing the ministry, the goals, and the way it wants to impact helping young girls who are walking through an unplanned pregnancy. And so it was there that I made the phone call and stepped through the doors of what was then the Salem Crisis Pregnancy Center and began my involvement with that. We went through a time of training, which I think was as much for my healing as it was for equipping me and what the Lord would have me do there. And that began a whole new chapter in my life.
I thought, somehow this is all going to come back together someday. And so periodically, as I would go to Salem to be with my own family down there, then I would stop and see Kim where she was working.
In our situation, it was considered more of a closed adoption or a partially open. Back then, they didn't have open adoptions like they do now.
And I said, Kim, I've got some really good news for you.
He had a letter that SaraAnn's mother had written, and he came in my office and just read it to me and gave me a photo.
And I said, Kim, your daughter has just made a profession of faith in knowing the Lord as her Savior. And at that point, Kim started to cry sitting at her desk.
And there were a lot of tears, but it was just a beautiful time to hear the fulfillment of prayers that she'd given her life to Christ, and that she was growing strong, and how her personality was growing and developing with her family. And it was neat because through the years we would keep in touch, and he would share updates of how things were going.
It was close to Mother's Day, and Duane said he wanted to take me out to lunch. And I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. Now they're married, and so he takes me out to lunch, and he sits across the table from me, and out of his wallet, he pulls a little photo. And it's a little school picture, I believe, of SaraAnn. She was about 7 years old. He handed it to me, and I'm looking at that, and I'm going, whoa, this this looks like Kimberly. Looks just like her. You know, and then he sat there looking at me and saying, tears running down his face, and said, I would give anything in the world if we could have her back in our home and raise her with her brother and sister. I just realized the anguish and the pain that was in his heart over this. He said, I pushed for that decision.
When we were on family vacation at Black Butte, I just really felt, real strongly in my heart that it was time that we told the kids. And me and Kim had talked about this at several other occasions, but the timing was just never right. And so I told her, I said, I think the time's right that we tell Brent and Tara, that they have a sister. That night after dinner, we sat down in the living room and we just told them, the whole story about what had happened.
Both the kids, their response was emotional. I think they were a little like, Mom, Dad, you? And a little of that kind of, oh, I don't think I want to know this. But at the same time, you could see the wheels turning. Through the years, Neil and I would keep in touch by phone or occasional letters, and letting him know that if there was ever the right opportunity, we would love the opportunity to meet this girl, or even a letter to know more about her and her life.
I said, yes, I think someday that will happen. And I just knew down inside myself that was something that would happen someday. I didn't feel that way towards all cases, but this one in particular. And so I called SaraAnn's parents.
She just graduated from high school, and there were boxes and boxes and things to be put in those boxes as she went off to college.
And asked them, I said, she's graduating from high school. Is this something that would be an option?
She expressed at that point that she was very busy in her life and she didn't want to handle anything more. So I shared that with Neil.
And they said, no, Neil, it's not an option, not at this point. And I said, okay. And I said, do you see it in the future? And they said, we don't know. And so I had to let it go. That was their choice, their decision to let it go. And so I did. Well, then SaraAnn graduated from college, and then she got married.
I had always wanted to take our adopted daughter, SaraAnn, to meet her biological parents. I wanted to see them, are they going to treat her right? Are they going to love her? And all these questions. And then SaraAnn said, well, I always dreamt of meeting my biological family with my husband.
And so this was that time in her life. And so she came to me asking what information. I explained to her my protocol in working that through. And she said, that's great.
He said, well, I think it's time to begin this communication. And he shared with us that our daughter's name was SaraAnn, and opened the door of opportunity for us to write a letter to her, which each of us did.
You're trying to relay to her, how you feel about the situation, how you felt about, giving up for adoption, and then also giving her information about, what I do, what my career is like, what my family life is like. It was definitely an interesting time, full of different emotions.
And the way it was left is we would send that letter off, and then perhaps she would respond.
We did letters back and forth through me with no location and no last names.
We were in Minneapolis at the time, and the letter had come, and it was, it was like a thick envelope, so you knew this was a letter of substance, lots of pages. So right away, I just opened the letter, and I went for the pictures right away, because you're just like, what do they look like? This is so crazy. I'm gonna see, like, my mom. I'm gonna see my dad, and siblings, and what are they all gonna look like, and will I look like them, and will it, like, will this answer all of life's questions to things? And it's just amazing, because interestingly enough, my family that raised me and my biological family do have some same, like, genetical roots. So growing up, a lot of people always didn't even think I was adopted, but in your heart, like, okay, I don't look like them, I'm a little bit taller than most of my family. Why am I so excited all the time and talk with my hands and jump around a lot and all this stuff? And you can't get that all from pictures, but I don't know, pictures are just priceless when it's that first time. I remember just like looking and just like thinking, like, you are so beautiful. Like, I really was just like, oh my word, my mom is gorgeous. And my dad is just like, he looked like a football player, and I loved football. Just taking in every little detail and like, I wonder if this is from this year with my sister. Does she still have that kind of hair? Is it shorter now? Is it longer? Because I saw another picture and she had shorter hair, and you're just trying to figure out all the pieces and figure out the timeline of these pictures and their life. My sister and brother at a graduation were standing, and there was a vehicle in the background that had like the last 4 letters of a town. I remember being like, oh, what could I do with that? That's interesting. And so right away I'm taking the pictures and feeling like a detective almost in a way, trying to figure stuff out. And I got a cup of tea. I liked black tea with a little milk and sugar, and I sat down, and I just remember just reading every single word. And I remember Kim would use in her letter like smiley faces, like she would write out smile, and then she'd have exclamation point, and that's how I write and that's how I talk. And I was like, she puts smiley faces too. I remember calling out to my husband, she has smiley faces and exclamation points. I follow her, I get the excitement, I know how this is. I never felt like a void in my life, like I was missing something. I definitely was curious. I remember growing up, I want to know about my mom, and I remember praying for her. I remember my mom who raised me saying, like, you can pray for your mom and you can remember her on your birthday and pray for her because that was the day that she had you. All of a sudden there was just this like moment of like, oh my goodness, this family, are they like, you all of a sudden feel this great need for them, like oxygen for a minute. You're just like, oh, I need this family. I need to know about them. I need to know all these details, and just an emotional like opening set suddenly. But then like God just came in like, and just through that letter just immediately brought, in a sense, like closure. Like, okay, but it's okay. Like, I had my hand on this whole time. I had a purpose in this whole time. So for that moment of just like craving and desiring something so greatly, and then have it just like immediately satisfied, even through letter and pictures and just resting in God. You know, you kind of assume you'll hear from your mom, but to hear from your dad, and that he was willing to write me and just share about himself. But I remember one thing he had noted is that he had worked for the same company since he was like 18 or 19, somewhere in there. And I remember being like, oh, he just gave away something, because I remember thinking like, that means you're still there, because that's about when you would have had me. And so that was something for me. I just got so excited. I was like, they're in Oregon and they're probably in Salem. And I just got really excited and kind of hung on to that, like feeling really excited that I figured a little mystery out. So.
Well, the way that I remember it was that Neil called in the morning. He said, yeah, we'd like to swing by this afternoon and bring a letter. And that was the first knowledge that a letter was coming to me. And so I was, just quite shocked. I'm like, because you can't imagine I've been waiting for this moment for 20 years. Even though it's a letter, it's the first contact. And so I've been waiting for this time. And so I was very, very shocked that he called and said, yeah, we'd like to swing by this afternoon. And I'm like, okay. And I remember Kim read the letter first, and then Kim handed me the letter, and
page by page.
Yeah, and then Kim was kind of conversing with Neil and his wife, and I remember Neil. I'm reading this letter, and obviously I'm just in tears. I got tears running down my face, and he's asking me questions, and I'm just like, dude, you got to give me a minute here, because I'm working through a lot of emotions here, and because I'm not a very emotional person, but this was something obviously that brought out many emotions in me.
There's a lot of neat little pieces here and there along the way. And it cracked me up because in SaraAnn's letter, there were all these smiley faces at different placements. And I thought, she does it with the actual smile. And to start to see this package unfold of who this young woman is and has become. And then we did another letter with more information and photographs, which was remarkable.
I remember coming home every day and saying, is there a letter? And she's like, no, not today. And this goes on for a while. And it was just painful every day. And then finally come home, is there a letter? She goes, yeah, it's in on the table. And so I remember just taking my jacket off and coming into the family room, shutting the slider door, and just opening the envelope and looking at pictures for a long time. And it was amazing just to see, what does she look like, and what does her family look like that she was raised with. It was just a very emotional time.
And you're looking at the pictures and thinking whose eyes, whose nose, kind of all the little things that make up your family and your DNA, and you see displayed in a photograph. And we were also putting pieces together because we still had not given last names out. But there was a wall hanging in one of the photos behind her that had the word Mulder. And I thought, oh, I think I know a last name.
Yeah.
We were working the detective sleuth.
Yeah, we told Neil he slipped up letting that photo through because he verified all the letters and pictures. So
We got to a point that the information in the letters, and the letters were getting longer and longer and longer, I said, are you guys ready for a phone call? And they both jumped at the opportunity for a phone call. I said, I will set up a conference call, and we'll go from there on how this is all going to come together.
So he explained, we're going to get you guys on the line. I'll get SaraAnn on the line. I'll stay on the line. A lot of times you just lose the ability in conversation, and I'll keep things flowing. I'll keep it comfortable for you. You won't be alone. And so we're all waiting. The phone rings. It's this kind of conference call between all of us. He does the introductions and, maybe that initial kind of awkward pause, a couple sentences. And the next thing you know, we're just taking off. And we're talking, asking questions, sharing things, amazing things like, I'm a tea drinker. I know that sounds random and obsolete, but she grew up having tea times with her father. And I have a niece with disabilities, and she grew up with a sister with disabilities.
And what was really unique about this call is that there were different points within the call. I couldn't tell whether it was Kim or SaraAnn talking because they sound so much alike. And wait a minute, now Kim, is that you or is that SaraAnn?
And we're just talking, and all of a sudden we all paused and said, oh my gosh, Neil, you're still there.
And I just felt like a fifth wheel sitting there and listening to this conversation, these questions go back and forth.
And he just started laughing, and he said, this has never happened before. I shouldn't be surprised knowing the two of you. But I think you guys can kind of take it from here, and why don't you exchange phone numbers and continue this conversation. And I'm praying for you guys. You have a blessing here. So we said, I'm going to make my cup of tea. She was going to make hers. Let's get back on the phone and talk some more.
So towards the tail end of the phone call, it was our desire to have, them come out and to see us. And so we just, asked them if they would like to fly out and come stay with us.
I got a call from Kim, I got a call from SaraAnn. Is this something that you could help arrange? I said, well, you guys fly into Portland from where you are, they'll drive up from Salem where they are, and you'll meet in the airport. And SaraAnn said, no, I want you there. And so I said, I would be more than happy to be there. So my wife and I drove down to Portland. SaraAnn flew in with her husband, and she and Reuben got off the plane.
It was really neat because you're kind of anticipating as the flight's coming in, and you're watching the clock, and people are starting to get off the plane, and it's like, where is she? I
was really excited, anticipating, but there is that just wondering,
what is she going to look like?
what do they look like?
What is she going to think when she sees us?
Do I look funny to them?
Are we going to disappoint her?
Do they like me?
What's her expectations?
What is it going to be like?
You just don't know.
I didn't really know.
Are we all going to burst into tears?
Are we going to cry?
Just be a blubbering mess?
Are we going to run to each other in a dramatic fashion?
We're watching as the crowds are sifting through.
I saw a group of people,
and then we saw her.
and then I saw Duane and Kim.
We saw the blonde hair,
And then I saw dark brown hair.
We had photos, so we had an idea what to look for, and we kind of can look at each other and put a few pieces together.
The most unique of reunions, from being separated by many years and yet coming together and feeling like you belong together.
I remember hugging Duane, and you just have that this is crazy, I'm hugging my dad. And then you have the mom hug, which is just so amazing. And so I got a hug from Kim, and then I give those awkward sibling hugs because you don't really know each other. So hi Tara, and then the hug to Brett, which was really awkward and tall, but wonderful at the same time. And it just went really smoothly and calmly, not overly dramatic, not tons of tears, but very full of emotion at the same time.
I didn't just fall apart like I thought I might. I actually was just in awe. And it was one of those moments where it was like, this is for real.
I think it was Neil had decided to have us go to Sherry's, which is just kind of your family mom, pa diner restaurant. We were in a corner, like round table booth, and there was, I guess that would have been 8 of us all crammed into this corner booth all next to each other. And I'm just like, I hope I don't spill anything, and I hope I don't order something weird and they don't eat that food, and just kind of thinking through those things. And as silly as it is, observing what everybody's ordering and being like, I wonder if we eat the same kinds of food. Like, I mean, what a crazy thing to think, but you're just wondering. And so we ordered our food and just talking, and you just say silly things that you wouldn't normally say when you're nervous, but we said it all together and joking around.
I think that over the course of time, your thoughts run through your head and you think, I wonder if in any way, shape, or form we could ever be some kind of a family together. I wonder if she would ever, be under the same roof as us. And just these different emotions that run through. So to have them here the very first time and to have them staying, in our house. I remember that night going up to bed and just being at the top of the stairs, and I could see all the bedrooms, and I knew that my son was in one bedroom, my daughter. Yeah, so seeing my son one bedroom, my daughter in one bedroom, and then our firstborn daughter with her husband in the other bedroom was just a kind of a fulfillment of prayer.
I just remember the first time I saw SaraAnn, just her appearance was like totally Kim and totally Duane, which is what you'd expect, but it's just kind of like wow, for real.
It was like, of course, this is just like Kimberly, my daughter. You couldn't deny her. If you saw the rest of the family, it's like she is flesh of our flesh.
But then seeing deeper than that, seeing mannerisms and facial expressions and gestures.
She uses some of the same things like we do, like that. She was that part of the puzzle that had been missing.
There was this instant sense of we belong to each other and we're connected.
We had an open house and it was crazy.
There's a guest of honor right there.
Hi, there you are. You guys have an amazing.
And my only sister says.
Truly a great experience.
Hi, SaraAnn.
We've enjoyed having you.
Alright, pause it now.
Isn't he cute?
I don't know if Matt will ever stop crying.
Die for her right now. Give me a gun.
I think it was our first trip here, and my cousins were here as well, and Tara and Brent, and we were all sitting around the table. So it was just kind of this younger crowd that I'm related to, and I'm in their age bracket, but I don't have history with. And I remember also my sister's friend, Aubrey, was here, and she was at the table too. So they were all telling stories, just laughing. And I remember looking like, wow, even Aubrey gets to know all their stories, but I don't. And it wasn't like they were trying by any means to exclude me. We were just having fun and sharing. It was really neat to know it, but I just remember being like, oh, I don't know their history. I don't get the inside jokes that make everybody laugh without an explanation. So you're kind of the observer in that, but you're still trying to find a way to belong to that group. And I remember my cousin Sally looked at me just quietly, and everybody was talking, and I just remember her looking at me like, I'm sorry you don't have all the stories yet. And I just remember being like, it's okay. Like, I'm like, they'll come and we'll make new ones. But it was an emotional time to just be like, whoa, I don't have history with them. And though I have my inside jokes and stories with siblings and cousins, like, I don't have theirs, but you feel like you should. So you feel like, do I have amnesia? Am I forgetting this? But yeah, I think those are some of the struggles at times where you really want to just be like you were always there, but you weren't, and that was by God's plan, and that means it's okay though.
And so it's been interesting. It has been hard. And I think those are things that sometimes people don't think about. It's like immediately you're together, it's happy family, like a takeout order. And it's like, no, it's a process of building.
I really believe that for SaraAnn to grow up in the family she did is so hugely a part of who she is. And what that adds to our family now, that she wouldn't be bringing to this family if she'd just grown up in Kim and Duane's family, which would have been great, of course. But it's just this deeper level of beauty that she brings into the family. So, oh dear, I knew I was going to do this.
And a lot of times people will say, do you regret that decision? Now that you've met SaraAnn and now that you've experienced that, do you have a lot of regrets? I look at who she is and who she's become, and I would have not helped her to be this person. I didn't have the ability in many regards to see that come to life. She's a culmination of this incredible family, the Mulders, and our DNA and the faithfulness of God.
Mother's Day weekend, they all met each other for the first time.
You know, hearing about the times that we knew nothing about, you know, in her childhood, what she did in junior high and high school, and just hearing about her life growing up was just...
And all good things.
Yeah, yes, all good things. And some other things, too.
It gave us a start in that relationship that we got to continue a little later at the birth of our granddaughter.
And I remember just sitting there and being like, oh my goodness, my moms are here. Like, my moms are here for the birth of our daughter. And it was just kind of like, it was just like a speechless moment, which is rare for me. So I was just like, oh my goodness, this is spectacular. And even just seeing Duane in there.
You know, the fact that through the years, you know, you didn't know if you would ever have the opportunity, you know, to do that.
I can remember kind of looking at the whole scene, you know, your mom's there beside you, and Reuben's mom came in with us, and Reuben walked up to me, and he had your baby, Evangelina, and he handed her to me, and he hands me this baby and he goes, here, Grandma, here's your granddaughter. I want you to meet Evangelina. And I'm just like going, oh, wow. And I'm sitting down with her, and I'm rocking her, and caught up in this moment. It was suddenly 26 years before, I guess it's even more than that, sitting in a rocking chair in a hospital, rocking you. And all those feelings just started welling up, and it was actually something that was feeling overpowering. And it was moving me towards grief. And I'm looking at this baby, and I don't hear God audibly, but I did feel like the Lord was just saying, oh, Kimber, just look up. And I'm looking around the room, and your mom's fixing your hair, and Tonette and Reuben and Duane are all fussing with cameras, and Katie Jo was playing with stuff. But it was like looking around this room and seeing the life that God had given and the joy in both our families, all of our families as one. And I kept thinking of that scripture in Psalms where David says, with God is full redemption. Amen. And that was one of those moments where I thought, everything, God, you promised, the husband for this daughter we would not raise, the family you would give her. I was watching it unfold right in front of me. And it was just, to me, a marvelous moment. It was breathtaking, and within those seconds, all the kind of tumult of grief just gave way to incredible joy and the sense of fulfillment that I've never experienced before nor since. And it's been an amazing journey, and I know we're just getting started.
To me, it's a true love story all the way through, with God blessing. All the way through.
And knowing what personalities to develop and fit together to glorify His name to the greatest degree.
And it just seems like everything fit in its place as we went along.
I think there's no way anybody can improve on God's orchestration.
There is a true relationship in the Lord that has brought these families together as a family. And that is an exciting thing to see happen.
Okay, like SaraAnn, you know this is the ultimate act of love because I absolutely hate cameras. They're really intimidating to me. But I would do anything for you. And I guess this is just a small way that I can just kind of share a little bit about my heart for you and the amazing love I have for you and the awe and wonder of God's hand in your life. Wow, this is going to get intense for me, but it's awesome. I am so thankful for how God has formed your life with your family. I look at qualities in you that I admire and that I dreamed and prayed for you. And you represent so many amazing things of the hand of God and the power of God to move in a person's life. And you are a testimony to your family of their love for you. You are redemption, and you are a gift from God in every way. And I am so honored and privileged to have been able to be part of this window in your life. And I believe God has some wonderful things ahead for all of us. And I'm excited for what that could look like. And I look ahead with a lot of hope for that. But I'm so thankful for you. I love you with all my heart. I always have, and I always will. And this week has been an amazing gift, and I will never be the same. And I'm so glad. And I don't know even how to put in words, because it goes beyond it. If I could talk to your parents, your folks, and just tell them how much I love them, and I'm thankful to see God's faithfulness lived out through their lives and through your brothers and your sister. And what a privilege, what an amazing God we serve, who truly redeems fully whatever we will give him and entrust to him. So I don't want to be sad or heavy or anything like that. I just want you to know I love you with all my heart. And our hearts, our lives are wide open for you. And you're always welcome. And it's an invite to your whole family too. I guess I'm going to go a little long because I know Reuben's going to edit this and then he can kind of cut some things in and out. There is a joy that just happens when you walk in a room. And I love that about you. And I love your smile. And I love the way you love your husband. And I love the way you love your family. And I love the way you love Jesus. And you are so many components of my family and your history, your biological genetic DNA, and blend that with this amazing family God's given you and your mom and dad raising you. It's like the ultimate excellence of everyone brought together to create this amazing girl by the name of SaraAnn Faith. And I just love you. So I could go on, and I will in my journals and my prayers and in my thoughts for you. But I thank you for trusting us and giving us this week. And je t'aime, my sweet SaraAnn. I love you very much.